What's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday morning. This video, I'm looking at the Draftkings and Fanduel final look for Week 13. We have a good amount to talk about. I'll take you guys through the final core plays. There hasn't been that many injuries so far this week. Hopefully that doesn't change later today or tomorrow. But we're pretty good on the injury front. Just some injuries are waiting on, like Myles Gaskin, and then Allen Robinson just got a questionable tag on Friday, so hopefully he plays. But take you guys through that, and let's get started. So, as always, if you guys enjoyed the content, I really appreciate if you guys hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be having daily videos out for basketball when that starts, and I'll start with the preseason. And if you want to join us for basketball or for football, you can visit the website dfsprocess.net. Links in description. Also follow me on Twitter. It's at the DFS Process if you want to stay more up to date and more in touch. So, with all that being said, let's get right into it. Starting off at quarterback this week, still kind of interested in the same handful that I mentioned in the first video that I posted on Wednesday or Tuesday. Not super interested in all the way up at the top. I think I'd rather go a little bit cheaper at quarterback this week. The highest, most expensive quarterback that I am considering is Deshaun Watson, the one guy above 7K that I like. He is facing the Colts at home. The Colts defense has been really good all year, but Watson has just been on another level the last month. We'll see how the injury or how the suspension of Will Fuller affects this offense, but I still think that with just how good Watson is, he's still going to be able to find the open receiver. And if they are trailing this game, we could see him throw a bunch, which would just help him in his fantasy line. So I like Watson if I am paying up. If I'm going in the mid 6K range, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers at only 68 at home in Lambeau against this Eagles defense that are just completely falling apart as a team. Rodgers has been super consistent all year. He's been one of the better fantasy quarterbacks in terms of a floor and a ceiling every single week. He's thrown like 4 touchdowns in 2 out of 4 games. He's gotten you over 25 DraftKings points in 4 straight. Hasn't dropped under 10 fantasy points except for once. That was back in week 6. Super consistent. You know what you're going to get out of Aaron Rodgers every single week. Even in the red zone and near the goal line, they do throw the football a lot. So just has a really high floor, and with just how good the matchup is against a struggling Eagles team, I think he's going to be able to, have another very good game in the high 20 fantasy points. And I don't know if he'll get a ton of ownership this week. So definitely like Watson and Rodgers at the top. And then I'm going a bit cheaper for looks like Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start again this week. Started last week against the Jets and played pretty good. 19 fantasy points. He didn't have to do too much. It wasn't a close game. So he wasn't slinging it out in the fourth quarter. But this week at home against the Bengals, also they should be able to win pretty comfortably. But I just think it's a better spot. He's at home instead of on the road. It's a very bad very bad defense that he's facing against Cincinnati. He has just been very good ever since that. Whenever he's been starting a game, he's been super solid. Like, started off the season with 9 fantasy points. That was a tough matchup against New England, but then followed up with 27, 25, 26, 30. And then he got benched back in like week, I think 8 I think week 8 or week 7. Depend one of those weeks. He got benched for Tua. Tua stepped in and played fine, but it seems like Fitzpatrick is just a better quarterback at this stage. Just with how young Tua is, he's dealing with a hand injury, so we'll see if he suits up. But for that offense, it's been Fitzpatrick who's been better in terms of moving the football and scoring points. So if he's in, I like him a ton. Looks like he will play, but if somehow if that changes, then go a bit cheaper. But if he looks like he's going to play, so I'll definitely be interested in Fitzpatrick at $6,000. And then you could take a shot on Jared Goff just for low ownership in a pretty good spot against Arizona. But the cheapest quarterback that I like this week is Mitchell Trubisky at home against the Lions. Now the Bears need a win badly. They have lost 5 straight games. They finally get a spot that they can have success in moving the football at home against a terrible Lions defense. So I like Trubisky in terms of a guy that's just fighting for his job, fighting for his NFL career. Seems motivated. They really need a win, and the spot is just super good. So definitely like Trubisky this week. I think he's going to surprise some people. So for me, the 4 quarterbacks that I'm interested in are Deshaun Watson, Rodgers, $6,000 for Fitzpatrick, and then $54 for Trubisky. I don't see the need to go super cheap. You could always punt with the quarterback and hope that you get lucky and hope that they throw for touchdowns like Colt McCoy or Mike Glennon, but that's something that I'm just not interested in. So right now, just with how I'm looking at the quarterback position, I think Fitzpatrick gives you a pretty safe play with a ton of upside. And right now he's in my mock build that I made earlier this week, or like earlier this morning. Moving on to running backs, we got a pretty big value play at running back this week with Josh Jacobs out for this one. So Devontae Booker is going to step in. 5,500, a Raiders team that does like to run the football a lot. He's actually been pretty good this year in terms of fantasy. When he's been stepping in, he's had a couple of big games even when Jacobs has been healthy. But now he's going to be the main guy in terms of getting most of the carries on the ground, and he can also catch passes. So against the Jets defense at 5,500, I feel like he's in line for over 20 touches in this game. So you can definitely sign me up at 5,500 with there not being a ton of expensive running backs besides Cook and Henry, and then you kind of got some guys in the 7K range like Jones, who hasn't seen as much volume now that they're playing Jamal Williams a bunch, and they've just been throwing the football a lot. James Robinson is always a decent play, but now his price tag is up to 73. You're gonna need him to have another like big game to probably find the end zone at that price point. And then Chubb, I like him still, but Kareem Hunt is no longer on the injury report, so he's going to have to deal with Hunt again this week. But I think you could definitely play Chubb if you wanted to. But going cheap at running back this week with Devontae Booker makes some sense. And then for tournaments, look at definitely Alvin Kamara. He's not going to get any ownership, and rightfully so in cash. But in tournaments, he always makes for a good play. But I kind of like Austin Eckler in that 7K range for a PPR monster. You're getting a guy that's gotten 16 targets in his first game back. And then you're getting Kamara, who's had one target the last 2 weeks with Taysom Hill. So I would definitely play Austin Eckler. I just feel like his floor and ceiling are much higher at this point. In the 6K range, you got Miles Sanders, who Doug Peterson refuses to use. Only got 6 carries last week. It's tough for me to trust. All of the matchup is really good against the Packers. They could be trailing this game a bunch and then abandon the run like they always do. So it's not that safe of a floor for Miles Sanders, even though the spot is good, because we know Doug Peterson hates running the football, especially when they get down, and they probably will be trailing in this game. And I think Carson looked a lot better earlier this week, but now that we got more value at running back, I'm kind of not that interested because Carlos Hyde is there, can take some work. But the second running back for me is going to be David Montgomery. Definitely want to get, I think, at least a little piece of this Bears offense. If you're not going to play Trubisky, I think you could look at the running game because the Lions have given up huge games on the ground to nearly every team. They are one of the worst defenses I know. Every time a team lets go of their coach, they seem a little bit more motivated, but I just think that the Bears are just really desperate right now for a win. They still have something to play for, so I'd rather take a shot on going with some of the Bears pieces in this game, and I like the price tag on David Montgomery at 5,500. Moving on to wide receivers. So this week at the top, you got 3 guys above $8,000, and I think the best is Devontae Adams in terms of volume, matchup, and the fact that Rodgers has just been one of the best quarterbacks in football this year. He has a really, really stable guy throwing him the football. He gets deep shots, catches short passes, going to get targeted heavily, gets into the end zone, 11 touchdowns, just gives you everything that you want for a fantasy wide receiver. And I feel like this week, after 3 very good games, but not slate-breaking games, I think he's probably due for one like he had earlier this year. So I would not be surprised if Adams comes out and breaks the slate this week. Other guys I like at wide receiver, in this, I'm not that interested in the 7K range just because I'd rather go all the way up and then go a bit cheaper. But if you're playing Fitzpatrick, then you definitely want to play Devontae Parker with him. Last week, super surprising at the ownership of Devontae Parker. People weren't that interested in him, although that doesn't make a lot of sense. They probably forgot about last year when Fitzpatrick and Parker hooked up for huge games all season last year, and Parker had his breakout season with Ryan Fitzpatrick as his quarterback. And last week he came in at under, I think 15% owned or maybe under that as well. Will definitely be more popular this week because people saw what happened last week and going to dump on. But I'll definitely go right back to him just like I did last week. At 6,400, the price tag isn't expensive. He's probably a top 10 wide receiver play this week with him facing the Bengals at home. Had a 35% target share last week, and they do like to use him in the red zone. Didn't get into the end zone last week, but this week they'll probably score at least a handful of probably three 3, 4 touchdowns maybe this week if things go right, and probably you get at least one going to Parker this week with Fitzpatrick as the quarterback. So I like the stack with them last week. Love the stack with them last week. Played that, and then I like the stack even more this week. So I'm definitely going right back to a Fitzmagic and Devontae Parker stack. And then the third wide receiver, they're probably the most popular wide receiver on the slate, is going to be Brandon Cooks, and I just don't see how you are not excited about it. I mean, he's getting a number one wide receiver at 5,600 and against Colts defense that is solid, but he has Deshaun Watson throwing him the football, one of the best quarterbacks in football in terms of taking a deep shot. So you're going to have a ton of upside in with Cooks because he's going to get some deep looks. You're going to get targeted early and often, and just his role just completely changes. Like Fuller gets a ton of targets, gets a ton of attention. Could hurt him as teams will focus on him a bit more, but I just think that Deshaun Watson knows that he has a couple playmakers left. Cooks is the main guy, and he's going to make sure he gets him the football. So these 6 I feel really good about this week starting your lineup with. I think all 6 are in really good spots. Other guys you can consider a quarterback are the 3 other guys I mentioned if you want to be a bit different, but at running back, I'm definitely going a bit cheap with Booker and Montgomery. You can play Austin Eckler in the flex and go cheap with tight end and defense. Tight end wise this week, all the way at the top, it's Darren Waller. You definitely can play this week against the Jets. But we have some value at tight end also this week with 2,900 for Akins. Going to be much more involved in that offense. You have 3,400 for Kyle Rudolph. But Thielen is back this week, so Rudolph could go back to kind of not getting that much love. But Irv Smith continues to be out, so he's still going to be the number one tight end for the Vikings. And then $2,500, you have Frisker with Jonnu Smith out. I know Jeff Swain has kind of jumped him in the pecking order, but Swain seems to be used more for blocking and then for running routes. I think Frisker will be a lot more involved this week against a very vulnerable Browns secondary. And then defense-wise for me, I'm going a bit cheap at defense this week, whether it be for the Falcons at 2,400. I feel the Falcons are going to win this game at home against the Saints, getting them at a very, very good price point with a lot of upside as they showed last week against Taysom Hill, who still not completely believing in. I think the Falcons are going to make him throw the football this week, and we could see them have a pretty good game once again on the defensive end. And then the Seahawks, with the Giants missing their quarterback this week, definitely played them at 3,300. Those are the 2 that I like a lot, and I was interested in the Jets defense earlier this week, but if I'm playing Devontae Booker, I'm not going to be playing a defense against him. So that's kind of it for the main DraftKings breakdown. FanDuel is very similar. I'll just go ahead and touch on that as well. All right, over on FanDuel at quarterback at the top, it's going to be Watson for me. I like Watson over Rodgers, just with him being cheaper on FanDuel. Gives you a little bit more upside with his legs. Obviously, Rodgers isn't going out there and running, so I'd rather take a shot on Watson. In the 7K range, I like Fitzpatrick at 74 quite a bit against the Bengals. And then if you needed to go cheap, I'd still take a shot on Mitch Trubisky at 6,900 on FanDuel. But right now, I like the way the lineup fits with Fitzpatrick, so plug him in there at quarterback. At running back, Cook is 10.5 and Henry is 10K. Just definitely probably won't get up to either one of them, just with the way that I am approaching this week. I'm going cheap at running back with at least 2 guys that I know I'm definitely going to play are David Montgomery, checks in at 6,200, and then Booker is only 6,000, so I like both of them. And then instead of paying 10.5 for Cook, you can get a guy with similar volume and similar touches in Austin Eckler, who could see like 25 plus touches again this week, and he's only 7,000, so I like him in the way that he looks on FanDuel. Plug him into the flex, and then pair Ryan Fitzpatrick with Devontae Parker. Checks in at 6,800, and then still get Brandon Cooks in there at 65. And these 6 leaves you with still $6,700. So pay up for a tight end. You can pay up for another wide receiver, pay down for a defense, or pay up for a defense, whatever. But same defenses I'm interested in on FanDuel. If you wanted to go all the way to the top, you could. It's easier to pay up for a defense on FanDuel with the salary cap. 4,900 for the Dolphins is where I would go, followed by the Seahawks at 47. But you got a couple of cheap defenses that I really like, and it starts with the Falcons at 3,500, just with the fact that they're at home. Coming off of last week's performance, I think they'll probably build off of that against Taysom Hill. So I like the Falcons a ton this week at 3,500, and then If I'm not doing that, I'm going to pay up a bit on FanDuel. And then tight end wise, pretty similar. It's going to be Darren Waller at the top at 7,000. Ertz is back, so that could definitely hurt Goddard. But they said Ertz might limit him a bit, so we'll see. That kind of makes me not interested in either one, especially Goddard being so expensive. But definitely look at Darren Waller on FanDuel. You could look at Tanyan, and then you can definitely punt on FanDuel with the tight end with Akins being 52. And then if Frisker going to get more routes this week, he's only 4,600 on FanDuel, so don't know if you need to save that much money, but if you did, you have a pretty reasonable tight end who's going to run a lot more routes this week with no Jonnu Smith. So this week looking pretty good as a first. Making some lineups this week. It looks pretty good with how everything fits. So hopefully everything goes well this weekend. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button before you head out, and best of luck on Sunday.